time to run out and get that cup of coffee.
Hey, now I just started the recording. Welcome to the Continuing Education webinar series, Cereals, Ordering, and Access Basics. I am so excited today to introduce our speaker, but before I do that, I just want to highlight some things that you can see on the screen. We do have a webinar archive that you can go check out, and we have a YouTube channel that has a number of our previous webinar in our series. We do have a very exciting upcoming webinar that I want to highlight, and that's Finding Jobs, Getting Jobs, Doing Jobs, Making the Leap from Library Student to Professional Librarian. And that is a free event, as I recall, but please check out the registration, and that's upcoming on May 15th. I will put all of those links in the chat once we get started. So I want to also just say welcome again, and welcome to Carol Seiler. Carol is a librarian who has worked for libraries with several years of experience in public, medical, and academic libraries. She is a certified serials holding trainer with SCCTP. That's the Serials Cataloging Cooperative Training Program. Carol has been with EBSCO as an account services manager for more than 17 years overall. Her position at EBSCO is on the service side, so not on the ordering side, the service side, ensuring customers get the most out of their partnership with EBSCO subscription services. She is passionate about her work in and with libraries. So welcome, Carol. Thank you so much for doing this today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it and hope this is useful to you. Quick reminder, you'll have it again at the end. Please fill out the survey at the end. Don't let others suffer through this if it's something that doesn't meet your needs. Or let the people know what does work. That also is helpful. The slides will be available to you after this session. So basically, we're going to be going over acquisitions, ordering, renewing, access, and then concluding. Action-packed hour ahead of you, so strap in. The majority of our time we're going to spend in order. Why? Because you really need a basis of information before you can move on to renewing or access or anything else. There's a lot of information and detail you need just to do the ordering. It's not just click and go. There are several different order types with cereals. We're going to talk about each one of these. The order types is dependent on publisher, the type of content, etc. So an individual is literally just a single title you order. Journal of Nursing Administration, Time, Newsweek, Sports Illustrated, JAMA. It is just the single title. Comes also with, these are terms you may also hear. Comes with means it's also available with another serial. So I can do two at the same time for maybe a combined price. Comes also with requires the purchase of one to get the other. So in order to get Journal Y, I have to buy Journal Z. Memberships. Why would you want to have a membership? All I need is the titles. Well, you might be required to have a membership in order to get the titles. You might also get a discount to those titles by joining a membership. And that discount may offset the cost of joining. And there may also be other value added to that membership that are not part of those titles but are useful to your library. Bill laters. Now, the majority of serials out there, you pay in advance. You have to pay the publisher to fulfill the order. They won't start to send you the issues until you pay them, except a bill later. A bill later is when you order from the publisher and they say, great, we'll send it to you when it's ready, and then we'll bill you. Sometimes you'll get the invoice with the item. This is generally used when you're ordering a single issue to finish off a run, or when you're ordering a back file or an irregular series, things of that nature. Bill laters are a very small subset of serials in all. Continuations and standing orders. Continuation is just that. It's a continued of the monograph, a serial or a series. And I'm going to pause here just for a second because I keep saying serial. And I want to make sure it's clear. Serial with an L. A serial is basically a publication issued in parts, and the publisher has no intention of ever stopping publication. They're going to publish the Journal of the Pony Express for as long as forever because the Pony Express will exist forever. Well, we know that's not true. Pony Express is not going to last forever. But the publisher's intent is to continue to publish us. A series with an ES, a series has an intended end. We have a beginning and we have an end. Now, the end might not be for 20 or 30 years, but we know when we finish the history of the glowworm, at the very end, we will stop, and that'll be a series. A standing order is kind of continuation because a standing order is when you tell the publisher, I want to continue to get that until I tell you. I don't have to renew it. I don't want to tell you again. Kind of like my mom telling me to clean up my room. I don't want to have to tell you again. Just keep cleaning your room until it's clean all the time. Keep sending me that issue, that subscription until I tell you otherwise. Just keep it coming. Packages. Now, when I researched to start this, create this session, one of the things I came across was packages are also called combinations. In all my years in serials, I've never heard it called a combination, but maybe you have, or maybe somebody will say that. Now you know, package, combination, combination, package, same thing. A package is when you order 2 or more serials purchased together as a single rate. But wait a minute, Carol, why is that not a comes with or comes also with? It's a darn good question because semantics. A package is usually, it comes with, you have to do those together. There's not a choice. A package, you often will have a choice, and we'll look at package types here in a moment. A package will often come with what they call access-only titles. That means because you purchase these titles, we're going to give you access to these other titles as well. So because you buy this program, we're going to give you the Golf Network because you're swell. You might hear about the big deal with packages. Big deals are kind of on the wane of late. They're not as big as they used to be. They're still big deals, but they're not as big deals. It's usually a very large cost for a very large amount of titles, and it can be very restrictive in cancellation. You're going to sign a contract for a big deal, 3-5 years, that you will be paying for that package for the next 3 years. What do you get in the package? Well, that depends on the package type. There are several different package types. There's a database model. Some publishers are moving to a database model. Instead of pricing out individual titles, they give you a set group with one price. They don't break out the pricing, which can be a little hard for you when you're trying to find cost per use, because there is not a cost per use with the database model for the individual title. There's a cost per use for the whole database, but the only way to get a cost per use for the individual titles is to do some math, divide the total cost by the total number of serials. But is that really accurate? Because if I bought that individually, it wouldn't cost that. So it's very difficult to get a cost per use when you're using a database model. With a database model, there are no changes allowed by the library. The publisher, however, can make changes. They will add and drop titles from that database model. Usually during the renewal period is when they'll drop an ad. You'll notice, by the way, as I go through this whole session, usually, generally, often, occasionally, there is no absolute in serials except that there is no absolute in serials. There's always exceptions. So in database model, usually the publisher only will make changes at the renewal time rather than during the year, usually. Swap, drop, add. Ooh, I love those. Swap, drop, add takes a mathematician sometimes. because you must maintain a certain spend. So what happens is you select titles from a priced title list. So here's my list. Each title has a price. I add up and I'm going to spend $20,000 on these titles. Well, that becomes my maintain. That becomes, I must maintain $20,000 with spend on this package. I can add and drop titles at the renewal, but I must maintain $20,000 in spend to keep for that package to keep the contract in compliance. There's some catches. You may have required titles called maintain titles. There may be titles that the publisher says you can drop and add titles, but not these 5. These 5 have to stay in it. You're going to pay for these titles regardless. So be aware of that. You may have maintained titles. And the swap drop add will come with access only titles. Again, you'll get the Golf Network. Whether you use the Golf Network or not, you're going to get the Golf Network. Pick your package. This is a custom list that you pick and choose, and the publisher treats as if it was a package. And then there's the historic titles, where you might get a group of titles together that the publisher will term as a package purchase, and it's based on a historic purchase from you. The new kids on the block in packages are called transformative agreements. And these came about with what we call open access. Open access are, and use heavy air quotes with this, free titles available. Why do I say heavy air quotes? Because it's free like a keg of beer. It's free like a puppy. Somebody somewhere is going to be paying for that. With read and publish and read, there's slight differences in read and publish versus publish and read. But basically what you're doing is you're getting a package of titles, and the publisher is giving you free, reduced, or tokens for article processing charges. Oh my God, Carol, what is this new thing you're adding in your article processing charge? What? APC? So remember I said somebody along the line is paying for these free online open access titles. If you're not paying a subscription to it, thus paying for the publisher to publish it, then the publisher is going to the author or the institution and saying, we will publish your article, we will make it free to the world so everybody can see this wonderful article about the glowworm, but we're going to have to recoup our costs if we make it free. So we're going to charge you an article processing charge of $5,000 or $10,000 or $16,000 or $12,000 or $4,000, depending on the publisher, depending on the journal, depending on what they anticipate for this. They will charge an article processing charge that the author will pay, or sometimes the library will pay, or the department will pay to the publisher to make that article free. So with read and publish and read, you're going to get a package of titles that you pay for. And because you're paying for those titles, they're going to give you free, reduced cost, or tokens that you can hand out to your authors on campus, to your faculty, or to your professors. And they can use that token or reduced cost or free to publish their article. Okay, so that's read and publish. They've been around for a little while now. They're still gaining speed. Subscribe to Open is the new kid on the block. Subscribe to Open means if enough people, enough libraries subscribe to this title to meet the cost of publication, the title will now be open access. So let's make up a figure. This publisher says when 100 libraries subscribe to my title, after the 100th, it'll be free for the remaining of the year. So in 2022, January, 100 libraries have subscribed. Great, I'm making it open access. Everybody else in the world can have it for free. Now, those 100 libraries do not get any money back. They've paid their money, and that's they've paid for their subscription. Everyone else in the world will get it for free because of generosity or for your subscription till the end of 2022. In January of 23, that starts again. But now the publisher says 110 have to subscribe. Oh gosh, only 105 have subscribed. That means that year that title is not open access. It is not free to everyone. It's only available through subscription. So for 2023, it is not open access. 2022 it was, 2023 it isn't. 2024, January, the calendar starts again. So the count starts again. So that's subscribed to open. This is something we're going to be hearing about. If you haven't heard about it yet, you will be hearing about it. There's a lot of publishers out there who are exploring these options. And again, read and publish, publish and read. They're starting to get established. Subscribe to open, very new to the market. Now let's look at cost, everybody's favorite topic. That's probably why you came to this session. How do they make that magical formula? Let's look at the magical formula they use. First thing I want to make sure you understand, publisher sets price. No matter what vendor you go to, vendor does not set the price, publisher sets the price. Publisher sets the price, and that price is given to every vendor. There's no difference in the vendor prices usually. Remember, everything has an exception. There are usually annual increases almost every year. Seldom, but occasionally you might have a drop in cost. But usually there's going to be an increase in cost to that title every year. Format considerations come into cost. Print is going to be cheaper than an electronic version, but the electronic version may be more up to date. What are you able to afford? What will be used? And then subject consideration. Humanities is generally cheaper than science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So let's look at how the publishers price these titles out. And notice this is publisher pricing part 1. There are 4 parts to this. So one thing that the publishers look at is who's buying it. If I, Carol Seiler, am purchasing a title, I'm going to pay less money than the library. But know what? If my doctor's office or lawyer's office or dentist office, called reception room, is purchasing it, they get the cheapest price whatsoever. Well, why is that? Because the publisher views the reception room, the doctor's office, the lawyer's office, the dentist's office, as an advertisement piece. Because you're not going to go into the dentist every week. And if you are, I'm really sorry, and I hope it gets better. But you're not usually going to go to the dentist every week. So you're only going to look at that once. And you'll see that and go, you know, I really need this in my life. I'm going to subscribe to it. So again, they see it sort of as an advertising piece. Libraries, however, more than one person can look at that. So the publishers see that as lost revenue because more people can view that and not subscribe to it. I, Carol Seiler, don't have to subscribe. I can go to the library. James doesn't have to subscribe. He can go to the library. Amy doesn't have to subscribe. She can go to the library. So that's 3 lost subscriptions right there. So the publisher takes that into account with pricing, who is purchasing this. They also look at things like geographic location, meaning, is it US based? Is it Mexico? Is it Asia? Is it Taiwan? The pricing can be different. Single versus multi-site, and that has to do with electronic. And we'll talk more about that. So another thing we look at with publisher pricing, it's based on format. Print is usually stable. Usually it's the same price, regardless of who's buying it in the academic library, whether it's UC Berkeley, Colon College, University of Tennessee, New York, Columbia, you're going to pay the same exact price for the print. Where the price difference comes in is when you bring in that electronic element, and we'll look at why that happens. So print plus online, electronic, meaning both online and digital, and other formats. And yes, there are people who still buy email and still buy CD-ROM, not as much in the USA, but oftentimes in Africa, I see this happen. So the other formats are still available. And it also depends on the content. Some architecture titles really lend itself better to CD-ROM or print. Publisher pricing part 3. Publishers look for electronic title pricing based on things like full-time equivalent. That usually means credit hours in academia. And you probably have a good feel for what your FTE is for campus, because that's reported everywhere. Tier, that's generally based on the degree levels in academia. So how many bachelor level, how many master level? And I say how many because sometimes it's not just do you have master level degrees, but how many do you have? If you only have one, you may pay less than somebody who has 10. Remember, may pay less. No guarantees here, everything changes. Or they could also look at Carnegie or other classification designation. Generally speaking, the publisher will use one of these, not all three. And then, of course, there's price quotes, where the publisher doesn't really disclose how they're pricing out. Instead, you need to go to the publisher to get the pricing. And they look at a variety of things. Variety of the things we just talked about, and as well as other things, I'm sure the costs involved, etc., from their end. So with price quotes, publisher does not provide the pricing to the vendor or to the library until you ask them. Does that commit you? No, it does not commit you. It just means you're getting the price. The librarian has to approve the pricing before the order is completed. So what about pricing from the vendor? Well, the prices, as we said, are dictated by the publisher. The vendor doesn't set the price. Publisher sets the price. What the vendor offers is a service charge based on the mix of titles. Wait, what? Mix of titles? What does that have to do with anything? Okay, so a vendor makes money in many ways. One way is by charging a service charge to the library. Another way is commissions from the publisher. So this is how that works. Vendors will offer benefits to publishers, just like they offer benefits to the library. For example, if you're a publisher, would you want to get 10,000 checks with 10,000 orders and have 10,000 contacts? Or do you want to get one check with 10,000 orders and 5 contacts? Ooh, it's a lot easier to deal with 5 people in one check than it is 10,000 people and 10,000 checks. So it's a benefit to the publisher. And thus, they will offer the vendor a commission or a lower price. They still dictate that the library has to pay a certain price. For bang for your buck for pricing, packages can be a good deal for you. Be aware of, am I going to use that information? If you're looking at, say, transformative agreements, read and publish, am I at a junior college or community college and we're really not publishing? Will that transformative agreement be of any use to me to get these tokens for free article processing if we're not publishing? Probably not. But if I'm a UC Berkeley, that might be a really good deal for me. So be aware of what you're getting in that package. Is it a good deal? Or is it a better deal to buy those 5 titles individually than to get the 100 titles that I'm not really going to use? And then consortia. You might join a consortia and get a better price deal. Consortias will often negotiate with the publishers for pricing. And a consortia could be a library system like University of Texas System, California Digital Library, CDL, the Texas A&M system. Obviously, I'm from Texas, so I know those best. But it could be someone like Skelk or Gwilla or Lyrasis or Minitech. There's a lot of consortia out there, and you might belong to more than one consortia for multiple reasons, but it can give you good pricing for things. Now let's move on to format. What do I want to buy? When I'm ordering, because we're still on ordering, do I want to order print or electronic? And the things you're going to look at, of course, is cost. One of the big things is cost. Is the print more affordable than an electronic? If they're basing my cost for the electronic version on my FTE, and I'm a junior college that has tremendously huge FTE, and I need this medical journal for a very small subset within my FTE, well, if they're basing it on my full FTE, the price is going to be pretty heavy. So would print be a better option for me? Something to consider. Who's my audience? Who's going to be reviewing this? How big is my audience? Will they need this? What's the purpose behind it? Am I fulfilling a accreditation requirement? Is it something that Professor X wants because he publishes in it and it's really cool and he likes it? What's the purpose behind the purchase? And then accessibility. And there's multiple aspects to accessibility. Oh, it's a hard word to say. To accessibility. One is offsite access. Will my remote students have access to it? Or is it only available on campus? What about ADA, my American with Disabilities, or what they also call VPAT? Will my student population or my users with different abilities be able to use that resource? Something to consider. When you're looking at print, print is the traditional collection method. It does require physical space in the library, so if your library is losing space, you might have to cut back on print. One person at a time can read an issue. That can be limited if you have an entire class assigned the same article, which I know that never happens. Dependent on physical delivery. So you're dependent upon the mail service or UPS or whomever the delivery service is to get it to you. So print is traditional, it's great, but there are catches to it. What about online? Online can be single titles available, Journal of Nursing Administration, JAMA, People Weekly, or can be part of a database, ProQuest, Gale, EBSCO, or it could be part of a package from a publisher. These are generally considered scholarly journals for an online, when we say online title, we generally mean scholarly journals. They do not include advertising, letters to the editors, etc. It doesn't duplicate the print experience. It's just looking up the article or getting to an article. And it's only available when connected to the internet. With an asterisk, notice the asterisk, because there are products out there that exist to copy the articles from online titles to an offline reading device. Online versus digital. So digital is not new, but it's still, I would say it's still in its juvenile period. Maybe it's teen years. Digital or newsstand titles. These are primarily popular titles. Time, Newsweek, People, Sports Illustrated, Consumer Reports. They're very similar to ebooks. So if you've gone to the library or you've purchased ebooks, you've had the digital experience. It's cover to cover. Everything from cover to cover is covered. is in the digital. You flip the pages. You have the advertisements. It's online, so you can click and link to the advertisement. This is being more utilized in public libraries and school libraries, but we're seeing a lot of inroads in academia. Why? Because of business departments, because of advertising departments, because of marketing departments. It's because of art departments. These can all be used by the class at the same time to examine things and review how things are being done. It can be very useful. But with digital, the patron may need to download an app to access it. When you're looking at collecting, when you're ordering online or digital, anything electronic, you need to look at a few things. Can I print, email, or save? Now, I know that sounds obvious in this day and age. Of course, I can print it or download it. Fine. No, there are blocks out there. There are titles where the publisher does not allow certain actions. So be aware of that. The vast majority allow it, but there are some that do not. Is it open access? Do I get it for free? Is it one of those subscribe to open? So we'll get hooked on it. And just like that really good chocolate bar that Whole Foods no longer carries that I absolutely love, and they don't carry it anymore. Will I get hooked on this open access title and next year it's not going to be there, or it's going to be, I have to pay for it? What's the access model? What's the online coverage? What do I get when I give them my money? How do I authenticate to it? How do I tell the publisher, hey, I can see that? Is it single or multiple? What's the license agreement? These are things you need to look at, and we're going to look at these in a little closer detail. One thing you need to look at is online registration. When you order an online title, digital title or electronic title, one of the things you need to look at is, do I need to register it? With some online titles, you'll need to register with a publisher. Even if you're going through a vendor, you'll have to create an admin account at the publisher's site. And generally, this is going to be your contact details, email, IP range, etc. Now, if you're taking notes, please, in all caps, use a shared email box for your online registration. When Jane Smith wins the lottery and is out of that library, and all your online titles are linked to Jane Smith's email, and now you no longer have access to Jane Smith's email, it is a heck of a fun time. That's sarcasm. Heck of a fun time getting that changed so that you all have access to your admin site and to give updates. So try to use a shared email or a group email box. Please. It'll make your life so much easier. Now, for some online titles, the vendor can request access is set up or can provide details to you. That's one of the benefits of using a vendor, is that they can provide all these details to you. You don't have to go trying to find it on each publisher's website. The vendor can provide that for all the titles you order, and you don't have to go hunting out on each publisher website. And this will include things like, what are the potential restrictions? What's the access maintenance? Who do I contact when there's a problem? What's the admin URL? What's the content URL? So using a vendor can be helpful when you're doing this kind of thing. What about access model? What volumes and issues can I get upon purchase? Now, when you buy print, you know what you get. I bought January of 2024, I get January of 2024. When you buy online titles or digital titles, you may get access to a back file. So I may be ordering in January of 2024, but because I'm ordering, the publisher is going to give me access back to 1999. Woohoo! So that's great. Now that I'm ordering, I have access back to 1999. Brilliant. But what happens when I stop renewing that? You're going to look for the perpetual access note before you order it to make sure you know what you're getting, so that if I stop renewing in 2025, do I still have access to 2024 that I paid for, or do I lose access to everything? So you're going to look for, if subscription lapses, customer retains access to paid content. Yay, I still get 2024. But it could say, if subscription lapses, customer does not retain access, which means basically it's a rental. You're not going to have access anymore. So be aware of that when you're purchasing, because that will dictate if you're trying to clear out your print stacks. Authentication. This is again part of ordering. The publisher requires you to restrict access to your population. Requires you to restrict access to your population. This is important. This is legal. You have to take due consideration and due diligence to ensure that only authorized users are going to get in. How do you do that? There's various ways of blocking access or authenticating access, and we're going to talk about these. One is username, password. And to quote Nancy Reagan, just say no. I highly discourage username, password. Why? How do you keep track of that and make sure that I'm doing my due diligence and not letting just anyone in? Because if I give Jane the username and password, and Jane heard from Amina, who needs an article for her class, and Jane gives Amina the username and password, and Amina gives it to Juan, who gives it to Peter, who gives it to who knows else, you've lost complete control. It takes a lot for me as a librarian to purchase something that's a username, password access only. It's got to be really, really, really important. And it's because it's so hard to maintain that access point. Internet protocol. This is the standard everyone uses. Not everyone. that most of us use. It's been around for a very long time. IP. It's not really all that secure, it turns out. Who knew? I did. But anyway, it's not all that secure, but it's better than nothing. It's a lot better than username and password. So an IP, if you're not familiar, is basically the address for your computer. Every time you turn on your computer goes out and says, hey, where am I at today? And it gets an IP address. It's called a dynamic IP. So every time you turn on your computer, not when you click the browser, but every time you turn on your computer, you get a new IP number. Yay! So most people will use IP as their access to get it. That's usually used on campus. Notice at the bottom there, some publishers only allow a single IP address access. We're going to look at that in the next slide. This is just as bad, if not worse. Might even be worse than username and password, to be frank. Because what single access means, only one IP, that means if my computer, every time I turn it on, it gets a new IP number, where is the computer that has the access now? Which one has the IP, the magical IP that has access? It's really hard to monitor. So I recommend steering clear of single access. Now, how is that different than single or multiple simultaneous users? Single access is that, single access, one IP, one user, period. Single or multiple simultaneous users. How many people can access at the same time? Doesn't matter which IP as long as it's within your IP range, but how many people can get there at the same time? Now, this is not heavily used in serials anymore. It's more often used in databases, but there are still some serials out there that do look at single and multiple use. So what does that mean? Single user, if Jane is accessing it, then James cannot get in. When Jane logs off, James can get in. When James is in, Juan cannot get in. When James logs off, Juan can get in. One user at a time. Multiple simultaneous users, 10 people at a time, 20 people at a time. They're also called seats. So be sure you look at that when you're ordering a title, because that can be a gotcha. Now let's turn our attention to license agreements. Oh, license agreements, how I love thee. This is another thing that seems really obvious, but if I hadn't run into it in libraries, I wouldn't be telling you. Negotiate your terms before you pay them. You do not walk into a car lot and say, here's $30,000, give me a car. And now here's what I want in the car and the color I want. Nope, you gave them the money, you get what you get. Negotiate before you pay. Also, make sure you know who on campus has the ability to negotiate. Who can sign that contract, that license agreement, because it is a legal document. Who has the authority to do that? Does it need to go to your legal counsel on campus? Can it be done in the library? Is there a gradation to what can be done in the library and what must go to fiscal or to your lawyers? Find out what you can and cannot do on campus. When you're looking at license agreements, how is it confirmed? Generally by signature. Now, you don't do a license for every single title. Well, you do it for online. Excuse me, I misspoke. Scratch that, erase. You do a license for every single title. It may be called terms and conditions, but it's a license. You negotiate very few licenses. So if you're looking at, oh, she said I have to negotiate. You don't negotiate all of them. Sometimes the terms are exactly what you need. Sometimes the publisher doesn't negotiate. Sometimes it's just a click-through or passive assent. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Signature is when you've negotiated it, then you both sign the agreement. Both you and the publisher sign the agreement, and there you've got your legal document. A click-through, we're all used to this with the iPhones or the Galaxies, where it comes up and says terms and conditions. And before you can go any further, you have to agree. And of course, we all read them, right? We go through and read every detail of it. Those are called click-throughs. Passive assent is when, just by using it, you have agreed to the conditions. Passive assent and click-through are still going through courts, trying to figure out the legality of it. Because, yeah, I clicked it, but I didn't really read it. Does that count? Those kind of do. But passive assent's still kind of nebulous. I didn't see any terms and conditions when I started using this. So do I really have to be held to accountable? So be aware of what your license is and what the terms and conditions are, or acceptable use. That's a lot to look at just to do ordering. Now we're ready to look at, do I go direct or do I go to a vendor? Remember, this is a vendor neutral session. Even though I work for a vendor, this is vendor neutral. So I want to talk to you about the options available to you. You can go direct to a publisher, you can go via a vendor. There are positives and negatives to both scenarios. It depends on what you need, and you might have a mix. You might have some titles you go direct, some you use a vendor, some you use multiple vendors. What works for your university? What works for your library? When you go direct to a publisher, generally speaking, you're going to have multiple checks and purchase orders because, again, publisher wants payment before they'll fulfill. You'll have multiple customer service contacts because each publisher will have someone different. And if it's a publisher with several imprints, you may have a different customer service rep at each imprint. You'll have multiple renewals. But the price is the price. There's no service charge. And you have direct control. Nobody can tell me what to do. I have control over this. That's direct to publisher. And there are other benefits, but this is the big thing. Via a vendor, you're going to have single or fewer checks or purchase orders, because usually you'll pay the vendor a few times, for the big renewal, and then you might have some supplemental or orders through the year, etc. So you'll have single or fewer payments. With customer service, now this depends on the vendor. Some vendors have one customer service rep per library. So if I have a problem, I call Janice or Barbara or Sandra, and they take care of it. Some vendors have one or multiple customer services per publisher, or a group of publishers will be handled by Sandra, and a group of publishers will be handled by Janice, and a group of publishers will be handled by Barbara. So be aware of what you're getting when you work with a vendor. Do I get my own dedicated customer service rep? Do I have a list of who to go to for what? You'll have single or fewer renewals. Well, you can't have fewer than single, but you know what I mean. A service charge may apply, though. We've talked about service charge. And there may be other value added per vendor. Vendors have other things they offer as incentives and to work with you to help you with your subscriptions. And each vendor has some unique things. A lot of them have the same things, but each vendor may have unique things as well. So be aware of that and look at the vendor and what you need in your library. When you're making an order, woohoo, we've looked at all this stuff, we're ready to order. Fine, ready to order. To set up an order, either via the vendor or publisher, you're going to need to provide the bill to ship to addresses. Who do I bill? Where do I ship it? And now ship to, even with an online title, publisher will want to ship to. I don't know why, but they want to ship to address. There you go. Tax status. If you're tax exempt, the tax exempt form. Who are the contacts at your library for that publisher or vendor? Who should they contact to do the renewal? Who should the publisher or vendor contact to talk about invoices, etc.? If your library requires you to have a PO or purchase order on an invoice, then you'll need to provide that. If you don't require it, you don't need to provide it. What format do you want the invoice in? Do you need to have print delivered to your library? Some libraries do. Will a PDF or Excel version work? Great. What about EDI? Does the publisher or vendor offer that? We're going to talk about EDI in a minute. If you're ordering online titles, you will need to provide the IP numbers or ranges, the FTE, the seats, etc., and whether you're multi or single site. If you're ordering through a vendor, there's some additional details the vendor may need. Now, if you've been ordering direct, or if you've been ordering through a different vendor and you're moving vendors, the new vendor will need to know what's the expiration date, what's the subscription period, so that they order at the right time. If you're moving vendor in June, but the subscription doesn't expire till October, you don't want to have duplications. You need to let the vendor know. Don't start the new subscription until October because we expire in October, until November because we expire in October. Have you negotiated a rate with a consortium or with a publisher? You need to let the vendor know. EDI and API numbers, we'll talk about those in a minute. And there may be other details the vendor needs to know depending on the value added possibilities. EDI, I've alluded to this a little bit. Now, EDI is an old technology, still works great. It's from the 1970s. Oh God, it wasn't even around then. So from the 1970s, it's computer-to-computer exchange of business documents. And is not just used in libraries. It wasn't even developed for libraries. It's developed for business. Libraries co-opted it. Yay, us. And we use it. What does this do? It translates your invoice into a computer acceptable language. And so you can download that invoice straight into Alma, into Folio, into Sierra, into Circe, and it will automatically post that your invoice information into your system. So you don't have to sit there and 10-key punch every single line. It'll automatically do it. It's very helpful, but you want to check and see if that's useful to you. Does the vendor or publisher offer that option? Then there's also API. API is a newer kid on the block. This is when applications talk to one another, not just computer to computer, but this is application to application. This is often used with, say, renewals. You might want to download the renewal decisions you've made and have it post automatically into Alma, Folio, Sierra, etc. Or your ordering decisions, automatically posting it. So again, I don't have to 10-key punch it or type it in on each and every serial. It will automatically put it in my system. Very helpful, very time saving. Work in the beginning for EDI and API to get it set up. But once you got it, you got it. And that, my friends, is order. That's a lot. Now we're going to talk about renewal. Renewal, all the things we just talked about still apply. Still going to look at access. You're still going to look at format. You're still going to look at all those things when you're doing renewal. I won't go over them again. They're in the slides. They're in the recording. You can go back and listen if you desire. So let's look at some things that have to do with renewal. Expiration dates. When you're renewing, you want to try to get to a common expiration. Generally speaking, most academic libraries go on a common expiration. This means wherever possible, everything expires at the same time. This reduces the number of renewals during the year, reduces the number of invoices during the year, and makes things just hunky-dory, easier to work with. Often this will be for academics, December common expire. Why December? It's a nice calendar year. A lot of online titles, not all, but a lot of online titles are restricted to calendar year. Education, not so much. A lot of education titles will do the education calendar, so it'll be July or August through June or July. But most often it'll be December common expire. Makes life easier. Everything will never be December. Why? Because sometimes you'll have missed an issue and the publisher will extend it. So instead of expiring in December, now you expire in January, then in February, then in March. or it could be a delayed publication, or it could be something else. You may be ordered in the middle of the year. So you're very seldom, if ever, will you see everything expire in December, but you want to get the majority there. The other option is no common expire. They're higgledy-pickledy all over the year. And that can be useful if you're often in a corporate situation where you need a different time frame for different things. But it is more work on your end in the library when there's not a common expiration, because there's often more renewals during the year, there's a lot more invoices, and you still have to deal with publisher may restrict the order term. When you're renewing, when you're going direct to the publishers, you return the renewal 4 to 8 weeks prior to expiration. You have to include the money with the order for the majority of your titles. When you're going with the vendor will usually send you the renewal at least 6 months prior to expiration, so that you have time to work it, talk to your subject specialist, talk to your faculty to see what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. You usually return that within 3 months. That way the vendor has the ability to code the order, do public insurance on it, and get the order out to the publisher with it. Check with the vendor. Almost said something that's vendor specific, sorry. Check with the vendor to see if when they order, do they pay the publisher? Remember I said publisher expects payment with the order. So if you're sending it to the vendor, hey vendor, I want to order these things. And the vendor says, great. And they send the order to the publisher, and the publisher says, great, send us the money. So it comes back to the vendor, who then comes back to you. Then you've got to get your money together. Then you got to give it to the vendor, who then gets it to the publisher. That's going to delay things. So be aware of that. You want a vendor who pays for it in advance. When they order, they send the money. And then they bill you, the library, to get the money back because you've already agreed to pay for it. Renewal notices. Oh, bless their hearts. Publishers will send you renewal notices about every 3 to 4 months. If you're ordering through a vendor, you can pretty much throw those away. If you're not, you may want to look it up, or you may want to look it up anyway. You may want to check your subscription list to make sure, oh yeah, that doesn't expire for another year or 6 months. Don't need to deal with this. You can throw it away or recycle it. Be aware, this has been happening the last few years. Publishers may send you a renewal notice for something you don't actually subscribe to. That's when it's important to double check your list. I don't order this. Do I? No, I don't. No, I don't. Do I order this? No, I don't. And you can throw it away. It's in advertising. And if you look at the fine print, it usually says that. But it will come across as if it's a renewal, and it can trick you. So be aware of that. If you're getting print titles, the address label will have a lot of really great information on it. This is why whenever you're claiming a print title, it's a duplicate, the vendor or the publisher will ask for copies of the label. Or if you're claiming it, sometimes the publisher will ask for a copy of the label because it has a lot of information. These are all from, thank you to the Austin Public Library. They're labels from the Austin Public Library. This information includes the account number for the title, the expiration date. You could probably spot those on several of these, when the expiration date is. And it has a lot of great information on it. So those are print titles. Cancellations. How do I stop it from coming? Make it stop. When you want to stop a subscription before it ends, that's what cancellation to a vendor or a publisher. When you say, I want to cancel this, a vendor or a publisher hears, stop this now. What you may mean is stop it. I don't want to renew it. Those are called non-renewals or dropping. If you tell a vendor or publisher I want to cancel, they think you want to cancel right now. And what happens is the publisher says, well, according to our policy, publisher sets cancellation policy, not the vendor. Publisher says, I'm not going to give you any money back. You already paid for your subscription. You're going to get it through the year, whether you want it or not. The issues may continue to come. Check your cancellation policies. Sometimes the vendor will say, if you can cancel within the first 3 months and get a prorated refund, or you may not cancel after the first issue is out, or you may cancel within the first 6 months, or you may never cancel. Check your policy.
Carol,
Yes.
I'm gonna jump in here. It's 2:55 Eastern time. So we have about 5 minutes more.
I will
want-
run through these. Hold on,
Okay.
Amy, I will run through these real quick. There's
Okay,
best
and then-
practices and there's questions.
Yeah, and then some questions. Thank you.
Okay, sure, thank you. There are best practices and what you might want to look at. And I'm going to quickly run through claiming. When you don't receive the issue, you're going to let the publisher know. And they may send you the issue, they may extend it. They may do nothing. You may have to claim more than one time. Publisher sets claiming restrictions, be aware of them. Newspapers are special cases. Get to know your courier. Stand outside when you know that paper is going to be delivered and get to know Bob, because courier delivery is often subcontracted and the subcontractor may not know the specific handling information. There's a lot of special things about newspapers. I urge you to read this slide later. Access issues, same as a claim for a print. Access issues when you have problems accessing an online title. Same thing, contact the publisher, contact the vendor, let them know. Woohoo. Final word, only absolute changes will occur. Be aware of it. There we go. How was that, Amy? Quick, quick, quick.
That was awesome, Carol. Thank you so much. And actually, James did send out a call for questions. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or put them in. Actually, I guess we would prefer putting them all in one place at this point since we just have a few more minutes. So please put them in the chat. And actually, since we're just waiting on questions, if there's anything you wanted to just sort of reiterate, Carol, especially since you did the last few slides super quickly, you have a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. I do want to emphasize, one, if you do have questions later, take down my email. Feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to help with anything. I am a librarian. That's what I do. I really enjoy it. So please don't hesitate. Also, I want to push again the survey. Please fill out the survey that Amy has linked in the chat. This will help NASIG get better programming for you. It will also help me improve. If this is something that was useful to you, please, please, please let me know via the survey or drop me an email. This is important information so that we don't waste other people's time. So that if you really want more information about license agreements, that NASIG gets a license agreement session out there. If you want more information about access issues or how to deal with online titles, talk to NASIG, get that in the survey, say this is what we really need. If there's things in here that you go, really, does anyone do print anymore? You can take all that out. Let us know that. Or, man, thank you. This is really what I needed. I needed to know what an IP was, or I needed to know what a claim was. And I had no idea about newspapers and their special needs. Thank you. Let us know that too. You know, a spoonful of sugar helps the cereal go down. Yeah.
Sorry,
Were there
Carol, that was
any
really funny,
questions?
and I didn't realize I was still I was unmuted. Okay, we do have a question. Can you comment on monitoring mailing costs for overseas vendors so that they don't pad the bills, or if they can consolidate shipments?
What I suggest is you get a detailed bill of lading or get detail from the publisher what exactly you're paying for. That will avoid the pad the bills. On how they mail, they may say it costs them $15 to mail something that really only costs $5. But they're the person sending it and they get the option to say that. It's kind of like ordering on eBay. I don't think it costs $10 to mail that book, but if I want that book, it's going to cost me $10. When you're working with overseas vendors, you might look at also the cost of the conversion of your money. Do they accept US payment? Do you have to convert that fund? If they do, you might look at a US-based vendor to order, because they'll do that conversion for you and pay, and the cost will be in the US dollar. I hope that helped.
Any other additional questions? Oh, and Bob says, yes, thanks.
Okay. I know y'all are just going, can I go get a coffee now?
Yeah, me too. And okay, so I just I'm gonna share, Carol, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Go ahead.
Okay, and I want to thank everybody for coming. So thank you so much. I did put the webinar survey in the chat. Also Carol's email I put in the chat. And there are some thank yous coming in. So but also I wanted to say a special thank you to those people who had some trouble getting into the webinar today. Actually, I'm so sorry you had some issues, and but I'm so grateful for some of the other CEC members and other NASIG members who helped with that. It really does take a village to put these on. And so please join us again for future upcoming sessions.
Thank you all for your patience with me and listening.